What an update we've got in the Duke basketball recruiting world. The Boozer twins are set to visit Durham once again in football season, just a couple of days away. So much to discuss here today on Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Today is Wednesday, August 28th, 2024. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. Football season gets started in just a couple of days on Friday, and we've got some basketball recruiting news to deliver to you with the Boozer twins set to visit Durham once again. All of that and more on today's show, as we'll have our good pal Kevin Connelly, the site expert from Durham, stopping by to chat with us here today as well. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. Also make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, share it with your friends, get the word out there about Locked On Blue Devils. And also, wherever you're listening to your podcasts, hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Really do appreciate all that support. So without further ado, I'm beyond excited to bring him back onto today's show. None other than Kevin Connelly is here with us on the program. Kevin, how are you, pal?
I'm good, JJ. How about yourself?
I can't complain, man. Can't complain. Really excited about all the news and headlines that we've got going on in the Duke athletics world, man. And let's start with some big-time basketball news. Seems like the Boozer twins are back there in the recruiting world making headlines.
Yeah, they are, and it's not an official top three, but I think I'm going to call it an unofficial top three. When you kind of highlighted it, they're going to be on campus this weekend visiting, an unofficial visit. Remember, last fall for the Arizona game, they had their official visit. They're also going to take a couple of unofficial visits to Florida and Miami. They were kind of the two favorites just a couple of months ago, really. Staying in their home state of Florida. You knew Duke was in the race. You knew Duke was going to be making a push, but they haven't finalized anything in terms of a group of finalists, but it certainly seems like these are the three major leaders in the clubhouse right now.
Yeah, the NCAA, as you said, you can only take one official visit, so any other follow visits to campus, or even sometimes you go on unofficials before the official, can't be official. So this will not be an official visit. They've already done those at these three schools. So all three schools in line for another unofficial visit starting this Saturday. Duke does not yet have a commit in the class of 2025, but as we talk about a whole lot, these two guys would be a great way to start building out your class.
Oh, yeah, it would be a great way to build out your class because you look at Cam Boozer, more like the power forward, wing type player like his dad Carlos was. You look at Cayden, he's more the facilitator and the point guard. He's the number 2 player in the class right behind AJ DeBanza, who is not considering Duke. He's the number 1 player in the class. He put out a group of finalists that Duke was not included in. So, this is the top player on Duke's board. People have really, you think for the past, 12 to 18 months, kind of compared the trio of Cooper Flagg, Cameron Boozer, and AJ DeBanza, and who's the best high school basketball player in the country. Now, obviously, that was all before Cooper Flagg reclassified from 2025 to 2024. And you could get, depending on who you talk to, you could get 3 different answers. But it seems right now it's either AJ or Cameron as that going for that best player in high school basketball. A lot of people are giving the edge to AJ, who reclassed from 2026 into 2025. But it would certainly be a great way to kick off the recruiting cycle for Duke, who, let's be honest, right now, for Duke standards, they're in a bit of a dry spell. They haven't landed anybody since Kamen Malawak, which was, you look back now towards the end of this past season. I think it was like that late February or March timeline where he committed, and obviously he was a part of the 2024 class. So Duke's still waiting to get on the scoreboard in 2025 or 2026. So as you said, it would certainly be great if they could kick it off with the Boozer twins.
Yeah, not many targets right now for Jon Scheyer and his staff in the class of 2025, but the Boozer twins are certainly at the very top of the list. They're the only 2 recruits right now who have held Duke offers from Jon Scheyer for over 2 years. He's been wanting them to be a part of the fold. You look at these 2 players, again, an unofficial visit to Duke coming up on Saturday. September 7th, they'll have an unofficial to the Florida Gators. And then on September 11th, in their hometown of Miami, they will visit the Hurricanes over there. Cayden Boozer, 6'9", 235, the number 2 overall player in the composite 247 sports rankings. And then Cayden Boozer, 6'4", 190-pound guard. He's number 18 amongst his peers in the class of 2025. So you talk about these two games in particular, different size, but both of them I think would be great additions to this team.
No doubt they would both be great additions to the team. And one thing should be mentioned that they're not necessarily a package deal. They've said throughout their recruitment that just because, say, Cameron wants to go to one school doesn't mean Cayden's going to go to the same school. Now, when you talk to other people around the recruiting circles, they say, yes, they're saying that, but in all honesty, they're both most likely going to the same school. But that just has to be the one disclaimer out there that they're not necessarily a package deal, although everybody expects it to be. And then you look also like at their future prospects. And I think Cameron right now is projected to be a top selection in the 2026 NBA draft after 1 year in college. You look at Cayden, I don't know. I don't see, at least when you watch him, could he fit an NBA system right now? I don't necessarily see that. Could he be a multi-year player in college? I think the likelihood of that is probably a little bit higher than obviously Cameron, who for sure is a one and done.
All right, we've got more to discuss on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, but really excited to see how it all plays out with the Boozer twins. Again, hopefully this is positive momentum. Hopefully they can follow in their father Carlos's footsteps, the 2001 national champion who had a great career for Duke. Duke really wants these guys in 2025, and Kevin and I both want them to be a part of the brotherhood as well. We'll go ahead and we'll take our first time out here on today's show. When we return, more of Locked On Blue Devils is coming your way. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. That's right. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So all you got to do, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sports book. Once again, we're talking about FanDuel, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today, also brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. It's the brand working hard that people like you and I have trusted for over 20 years to give alert, energized feeling that we're trying to have to get through a busy and hectic day. You always know where to find 5 Hour Energy shots, right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, gas station, grocery store nationwide. Stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of the delicious, energizing 5 Hour Energy shots. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. The offer is only valid until September 30th in one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders, so go to 5hourenergy.com today. 5 Hour Energy is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, we keep rolling. Locked On Blue Devils. I'm JJ Jackson. He's Kevin Connelly, the site expert for Ball Durham. Promote your website, if you will, Kevin.
Well, we got everything you could possibly want on Duke Athletics over at balldurham.com. Duke football, Duke basketball, we're all on top of it. So we appreciate everyone reading every single day over at balldurham.com. And then you can follow us on social media at ball_Durham.
All right, we got to turn the page a little bit to football because Friday the season starts for Manny Diaz and his team to kick off the 2024 season. They're going to play an FCS opponent in Elon. How does Duke get off to a good start to this season, Kevin? What does that kind of look like as we are now 48 hours away from the start of the year?
Well, I think all eyes are going to be on the quarterback, right? And Malik Murphy, the highly coveted transfer from Texas. He was named as the opening day starter. Everybody expected him to be the opening day starter, beating out the two guys that still stayed on the roster from Mike Elko's squad. So I think all eyes are going to be on him. certainly you want to come out, you want to start fast, you want to put a couple of touchdowns on the scoreboard in the first half, and kind of ease into the game, especially going up against a team like Elon. So certainly you don't think there's going to be too many things to take away from this game. I think one thing, aside from the quarterback, that I'm looking at is the defense. I mean, Manny Diaz is this great defensive coordinator, has been really throughout his coaching career in college football. A lot of people will remember him as the DC at Miami before he became the head coach, and obviously as a defensive coordinator the past couple of seasons over at Penn State, who had one of the best defenses in the country. So I think the defense is going to be something a lot of people are looking at just because of how good and the track record that Manny Diaz has coaching defenses.
Anytime you've got an offense, sometimes it can take a little bit to get into a rhythm with the offensive line being on the same spot as quarterbacks and receivers. More times than not, you feel like the defense is out of the gates in a stronger spot than your offensive side of the ball. And for Duke, going into a game like Friday, playing an Elon team who just plays at that FCS level, Duke is supposed to win a game like this, supposed to kind of set the tone defensively. And I think that's a great way to kind of start the Manny Diaz era, because the defense can really do what they need to do and set that tone.
Yeah, and also, like, when you have these games at the beginning of the season, teams often don't look past their opponent because it's still the hype and the pomp and the circumstance of opening night and week one. And even when you look in Duke's case, going on the road to play a Northwestern team in week 2 on a Friday night in Chicago, you could overlook Elon, but if it was, say, in the middle of the season, but I don't think that'll happen in the beginning of the season, just because you are still going to have that hype that surrounds a week 1 of the college football season opening at home.
Without a doubt, excited to see this team come together, getting used to life with Manny Diaz as the head coach after taking over for Mike Elko over at Ball Durham. You had a story up recently, Kevin, talking about Coach Diaz. Just says that this is a different looking football team compared to what he saw in the spring. Really chaotic. We had the Birmingham Bowl against Troy to close out last season. Manny Diaz has been named as the head coach, but he's getting there late. We've got Trooper Taylor, the interim head coach, filling in for Mike Elko. Then turnover just sort of takes place. You got to get a coaching staff together. And Manny Diaz says, yeah, this is just totally different than what we were seeing in the spring.
Yeah, right. I mean, even go back a little bit further into when the season ended and Mike Elko was rumored to be taking or to be even interviewing for other teams' head coaching jobs, Texas A&M being one of them. And that kind of died down a little bit. And he was like, no, I'm going to stay at Duke. It looked like Texas A&M was shooting a little bit higher than a Mike Elko in their coaching search. And they got turned down by a couple of guys who elected to stay at their own schools. And then all of a sudden it was like, hang on, we're going to go back to Mike Elko. And that's when the wheels started turning. He really left Durham in the middle of the night to go to College Station without really telling anybody on the team. And that's kind of how the Duke football offseason began. And as you mentioned, the bowl game was still looming. So it's kind of remarkable how Duke has turned around and pieced together a team that I know certainly people aren't projecting to be at the top of the ACC, but when you look on paper and who comes back and who they brought in, it seems like they're going to have a respectable team this year that could compete for those 6 wins to qualify for a bowl game. And then in relation to Manny Diaz's comments, right, that's kind of the hope you want. You want to see that progression from your team. You want to see your team start building and getting that continuity and getting better and progressing as the season goes on. So especially when they put the pads on, right? Because in spring ball, early in training camp, you don't have the pads on. And now you put the pads on later in training camp, and you really start to see everybody bulk up. And he's happy with that, and I think fans should be as well.
You used the word remarkable a moment ago, Kevin, and I think we would describe what happened over this weekend as remarkable in the Duke football sense as well. In terms of recruiting, Bryce Davis flips his commitment from Clemson to Duke, being committed to Clemson for just 1 month exactly. A lot of people thought this isn't over. He's from Greensboro, North Carolina. He's a top 75 player in the country, and the entire college football world is talking, wait a minute, 2025, Manny Diaz gets that level of a flip. That's huge, considering if you're this coaching staff trying to promote Duke football, you haven't even played a game yet to kind of display what you want to be.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, Manny Diaz has been a really good recruiter throughout his career as well. And I don't think a lot of people thought it was going to translate right off the bat at Duke. You would think almost kind of like Mike Elko that you're going to have to show it on the field first and
Yeah.
win games. Um, Even go back to the transfer portal and Malik Murphy. I mean, there were a lot of schools after him, big time schools that maybe have a higher college football tradition than Duke. And yet he still elects to come to Duke and play for Manny Diaz. And now even going out into the high school recruiting ranks and getting this big time flip from a highly respected top of the line, top pick to win the conference just about every single year in Clemson. It's certainly a great way to start Manny Diaz's college career here, head coaching at Duke.
Yeah, so glad to have Bryce Davis commit to Duke football. They're on the defensive front, going to be a big-time addition. All right, we've got to take one more time out. College football season is right on the horizon. What do you need to know about the sport? What do you need to know about the ACC ahead of a new year? Kevin Connelly tells us when we come back in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by our friends at Gametime, the absolute best place to go and find your tickets. They've got a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you the only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. That's right. On the Gametime app, you've got the seat views that are amazing to get the panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. It's the lowest price guarantee. Your Gametime is going to credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What is it? It's Gametime. Gametime is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Let's keep going. Kevin Connelly's with me on the program today. You can follow him on X at Kevin Connelly24 and on Ball Durham at Ball_Durham. It's a new college football season in so many ways, Kevin. Not only are we always talking about the transfer portal and the coaching carousel and NIL deals, we've got a college football video game back for the first time after a decade. 12 teams are going to make the college football playoff this year.
Yeah, and I think it gives more interest to the regular season because typically you lose a game and you know you're pretty much done. Like your season's over in terms of competing for a national championship. Now, certainly there are programs like Duke. You lose a game, you're still trying to get into the postseason. You're still trying to get into the best bowl game possible to cap off your year. But for your bigger programs, they kind of know you lose a game and you're done. It's not the case anymore. And I think it's really exciting. And I think it's going to draw a lot more interest to the sport throughout the course of the season.
Excited to see all of this come together and see, what it looks like week by week when we get to those college football playoffs. The first few rounds will be at campus sites for those games before we kind of get into the bowl. Like the whole thing is going to have a new level of excitement and energy around it.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think it's good for the sport. I think it's good. I think, like I said, it's going to bring a lot more interest throughout the season. You're going to have a lot more fan bases engaged throughout the course of the season. And I think it's also going to draw the common fan's eye to say, oh, man, look at this 12-team playoff. And also, I think the new matchups we're going to see with conference realignment. I don't know if conference realignment is necessarily good for the sport and not just college football, but college athletics in a whole. But I think certainly it's going to draw more eyes to college football this season just because you're having in-conference matchups that you've never seen before. For example, like a Duke and an SMU and a Duke and a Cal, or even go to the Big Ten and Ohio State and an Oregon and matchups like that. So I do think that will be good for the sport and drawing interest.
You talk about big games throughout the course of the sport and big games in terms of setting up the national picture at the end of the year. Week 1, Saturday, just a couple of days away, we're going to see Georgia take on Clemson from Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Those are two teams where when it's just 4 teams in the college football playoff, if one of them loses, it's not the end of the world because it's not a conference loss, right? But really, you don't feel that great about your chances getting into the college football playoff. Now, it's not as big of a hit, but it's still, we're able to have such an amazing game to open up the season with something like Georgia and Clemson.
Oh, yeah, you could even go back into week 0 in the game in Ireland, which featured 2 ACC schools in Florida State and Georgia Tech, with Georgia Tech pulling off the upset. A lot of people had picked Florida State to win the ACC, and there's mixed opinions that I've read and I've heard online about Florida State and their chances even with the 12-team playoff. Like, are they out now? Because Georgia Tech not projected to be a really good team in the ACC this year. Is that going to be too big of a loss for them? Plus it being a conference loss. Is that going to be too much for them? Or because they suffered a loss like that in week 0, is there a lot of time for them still to recuperate and get themselves back on their feet? And I think they'll play Monday night on Labor Day against Boston College. But yeah, and it creates a lot more conversation. Right? There was so much conversation about the 14 playoff and specifically teams 5 and 6. You look back to last year with Florida State not getting in after the Jordan Travis injury, despite going undefeated throughout the regular season. I don't think you will certainly have debate between teams 13 and 14, but also to an extent, all right, now we're talking about teams 13 and 14 and not teams 5 and 6 who might be undefeated or who might just have one loss to a Georgia. And is that enough to keep them out? When you're talking about teams 13 and 14, in all likelihood, they're going to have 2-3 losses, and it's going to be a lot easier. People are going to sleep a lot better at night keeping them out compared to teams at 5 and 6.
So looking at college football right now and looking at your work over at Ball Durham, teams like Georgia, Oregon, Clemson, Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, what do you think sort of separates those schools from the rest?
I think it's so razor thin, especially this year. It feels like college football is wide open. Obviously, you could point to the quarterback. I look at two things. I look at depth, and I look at the big bodies up front. If you can control the line of scrimmage, you're going to have a really good chance to win football games. And obviously, people are going to get hurt. It's a sport of football. It's a violent game. If you can have quality depth behind your starters, that's going to go a long way, too, into winning in a college football season.
All those teams that we named, we know that they've got depth. We know that they've got big bodies. We know that they're able to get the job done at the end of the day. They've got that big-time experience that they're able to use to their advantage. Kevin, just a couple of days away from the Duke football season getting going and more action in college football. Tell us once more where we can find all of your work. And then, hey, we need updates too, right? Because this weekend, like we led at the top of the show, Boozer twins coming back to Durham.
Yep, we'll be all over Duke football's game and the Boozer twins visit over at balldurham.com and on social media as well at ball_Durham.
Kevin, great to see you as always. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll do this again sometime soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Kevin Connelly, the site expert from Ball Durham, joining us on today's show. Go check out all of his work. Be sure to support him for everything that he does. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.